Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here today with Drew Eubank and Jordan Frank of the Zion Solutions Group to discuss the future of warehouse automation. Drew and Jordan, thank you for joining me today. Can each of you briefly introduce yourselves and describe your roles within Zion Solutions Group, and also how you became involved in the field of warehouse automation in general? Drew, let's start with you.
Yeah, Drew Eubank, one of the co-founders of Zion Solutions Group. I've been in warehouse operations around it since 2002. So I think we're 22 years now. Prior to this, we worked at another large integrator and we decided to start our own. So we've been in business a little over 2.5 years, been very blessed with great partners like Locust and great opportunities.
Fantastic. And Jordan?
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Glad to be on here first and foremost. And myself, I also am one of the co-founders along with Drew. I'm on our sales and solutions side. So I'm our EVP of sales and solutions. That's what I've spent the bulk of my career doing, mainly in the distribution center, along with technology and various different types. So goods to persons, persons to goods, like the Locust solution, along with conveyor, high-speed sortation, racking, and all the other things you'll typically find in the four walls. So happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
So let's get started with that conversation. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see companies and your customers face when they're implementing new solutions for their warehouse? Jordan, let's go with you.
Yeah, first off, you have to make sure you have the right technology or the right solution for the particular need. And there's just so many different types out there. It can be hard to feel confident that you have the right technology. So that's kind of the first hurdle. Once you get past that, it's really the adaptation of your team within the facility. The team has to embrace the technology, understand that it's there to supplement, understand it's there to optimize and drive efficiency. It's not necessarily there to replace. So any technology that is ultimately implemented is only as successful as a team wants it to be. So if you can't get it integrated into your culture and into your team, you're going to face many different challenges. So that's an area that we educate people on. And it's been a challenge that we've seen that ultimately led people to remove technology because of their inability to really work around it.
Thank you. And Drew?
I think some of the challenges come from preconceived notions about automation and technology in the warehouse. What's out there? There's a large market saturation, right? They all do a very good job of sales and marketing, showing off their shiny toys and objects. So I think that one of the bigger challenges we face is just the inability to understand all the options, what's real and what's not, from a marketing and sales perspective to an operational success story. And then customers being willing to ask the question like, hey, what's best for me, right? Because everybody's smart. Everybody's very intelligent that we work with, but a lot of times I call it the shiny object syndrome blows by. We think, oh, that's awesome. That looks great in my operation. It may or may not be a fit. So I think that's a big challenge that the market faces today.
So how do you get past that shiny object syndrome that your customers can have? And how do you approach overcoming those challenges, especially in terms of helping the employees adapt and integrating the solution?
I think it's mostly education. It's understanding the customer's operation, understand the cost for me, understand the customer's culture, what they're used to having, right? If you had 5 levels of warehouse automation and you're on a level 0, you don't go from 0 to 5, right? Because you may not have the team or scale. Understanding the limitations of the customer, what are they trying to achieve, what are they trying to do, and what the end goal is. When you understand all those, you can go back to solutions that fit those goals instead of finding a way to fit a solution into a specific technology.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate that. And Jordan?
Yeah, we actually had a conversation about this yesterday, or I've been earlier today. But I think one of the biggest things you have to realize is you don't want to automate just to automate. It's a fancy word that's out there. There's a lot of shiny objects, but just because it's out there doesn't mean you need to do it. So one of the first questions that we ask any potential client that's interested in technology is the question of why. Why do you think you need it? Why do you think that product? And just to Drew's point, education is really critical, but it's also ensuring that people are automating or putting technology in for the right reasons versus just because they saw somebody else that did it or because they saw it at a trade show that looked really cool. So it's really making sure that the opportunity exists for the technology they're looking to implement. And then there's a strong business case behind it, whatever that business case may be.
So, what opportunities do you see for growth and improvement in warehouses and warehouse management over the next few years?
Yeah, when it comes into the warehouse, I think you'll see that. Um, I'll tell you, with Locust, it's pretty neat. When Locust first came out, there was a lot of opportunities where we walked in. There's robots moving around, unfenced. That was pretty cool to see, right? And I think what we're going to see is more and more of that with bigger and bigger technology. So Locust has expanded their offerings as an example, but there's other options out there like the humanoids that are coming out, and they're piloting those right now. They do require a safety fence around them. Same with the industrial arms because there's still some things that need to be proven out, some kinks that need to be worked out. But where I see the warehouse growing is that I see more and more technologies being implemented in a truly flexible way that doesn't require a lot of infrastructure within the four walls to make it work. So I'm excited to see where that goes, but I don't know of one particular technology. I just see flexible technology being implemented.
How about you, Drew?
I think you're just going to see more scale of technology in warehouses, period, right? There's still a vast majority don't have any type of automation or technology in them, whether that was cost constraints, whether it was fear of the unknown and things of that nature. As we get more mature offerings in the market, like Locust, been around for a while, it's a proven tech, that's only going to expand and grow. And I think for those customers who have the foresight that they need to be more nimble, be able to respond to market demands more quickly, it's inevitable. They're going to have to adapt to it. They're not going to be able to hold off any longer. They're going to have to make those changes. And I think that's the next big phase we're going to go through. We've already started somewhat. I think COVID fast forwarded where we were quite a bit. I think we're starting to see a little bit of market reduction in the amount of technology that's out there as copycats come and go. But I think that adaptation inside the four walls is only going to continue to be exponential growth as manufacturers say, hey, I have to have something to be better. I've got to get out the door quicker to maintain market share. I have to get my widget to, you know, Susie, Joe, Sam, and Bob to make sure they can use and buy it in a faster fashion that's cost effective, which is ultimately going to lead to faster adaptation of technologies that if you asked somebody 5 years ago, they wouldn't have even considered.
So, how does the Zion Solutions Group help warehouses grow and make those changes that they need to make in order to be successful?
Drew.
Well, I think the one thing we do is we don't ever assume, right? We will go into the customer and what's really happening? What's your goal? What are you trying to do to develop a solution, right? We pride ourselves on being able to think outside the box on what the solution needs to look like and then find partners like Locust to bring in when it makes sense. Find other partners when it makes sense to solve the specific challenges. They're not just looking at today, but then 3 or 4 years from now. I think the second thing we do really well is try to help them understand the scale. A lot of times people talk about a 5 to 7 year forecast. We know that can shift overnight. So if you're trying to achieve something in 5 to 7 years, what can we do that maybe gets you guaranteed 2.5 years there, can scale up through different profiles and expand onto instead of biting it all off in one chunk and then having something that may or may not be viable 5 years from now. So you're making the best use of your capital today instead of having to wait to see if it's going to work.
So, what do you see as the current? We talked about the challenges the companies are facing when they're implementing solutions. What do you see as the ways that they can grow and evolve over the past few years into where they are now? How did that happen? And how is the warehouse automation a big part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think warehouses are. It's becoming more of the norm to have some level of technology within the facility. So we're kind of getting past that hurdle. I said one of the challenges was embracing, the technology and integrating it into your culture. But people are seeing robotics more and more every day. If you go out to the airport, you'll see the robotics kind of sweeper that's going through the airport itself. They've got the food deliveries in some of the airports. Out in Las Vegas, they've got the robotic bartending application. So you're starting to see more and more robotics is just part of your everyday life. And what that allows us to do is implement it into the warehouse, and we've kind of solved that challenge. So that's been one area that operations has grown. The second area is, when we're looking at large e-commerce type applications, there is technology out there that can drive some significant optimization and efficiency gain while utilizing the cube within the facility. That technology was a little unproven. There was like AutoStore that was around for a long time, but there was a lot of new players and they were just kind of getting their feet, right? I mean, they're really young companies as compared to some of the manufacturers we see out there. but you're starting to see a little bit more run rate, a little bit more mileage on some of these other technologies that is giving people additional confidence. So now when we're putting in these technologies, instead of it being kind of a pilot or a beta, it's really a more of a proven technology, a more mature technology that allows people to kind of bite off that apple, if you will, a little bit sooner than they would previously. So it's kind of my thoughts.
Perfect. Drew?
I think a change in leadership approach in a lot of organizations is newer. Maybe, I grew up in the Nintendo generation. I was there when Nintendo came out and ever since, and, got to see the advent of CD players that are personal all the way up to our phones we have now. I think having those types of folks inside of leadership positions have given more of an appetite to be a little riskier on what we do, not just say, let's do the same thing every day and push through it, which has allowed us to really to find customers who are also willing to ask for help. I think if you go back a couple generations, it was looked as a weakness to ask for outside help, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing if I go ask people for help. And I think today it's understood that, hey, you need experts. That's all they do, right? They eat, sleep, breathe this. They live it every day. They can come in and help guide me on a path to make me more successful quicker. And that there's not one way of doing it. And that's the value of that and exploring options. So I think that evolution is the biggest thing that I've experienced.
What are the types of customers or customer profile that would work best to ask you for help?
I think just anybody who has a question, right?
Mhm.
Like you're sitting inside this distribution center and you've got a problem, you don't know how to solve it. It could be something small, it could be something massive. Um, Anybody who's just willing to look for a partner that's going to help walk them through solutions and not try to shove something down their throat, right? When you
Yeah.
think of locus, if you've got somebody picking on paper, that's a tremendous step, right? And telling people, hey, if you're picking 40 lines an hour, when we get to 85, you've got 100+% improvement. That's fantastic. Like, how do we get those people? That's our ideal customer, somebody who's looking for our assistance to help guide them, not necessarily tell us what we need to do or what they want to do. Like, we like that. Like, we like this, but will work with us to understand. And that way it's collaborative, right? Because we're looking for partnerships. We want customers to come to us for other problems, advisory work and services and such. And I think that's just where the best start is.
Thank you. Jordan, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think I agree with what Drew's stating there. And the only thing that I would add is there's customers out there that have very strong engineering teams, and they have kind of their technology that's somewhat selected, and those companies are great, and we'll work with those. But really, an ideal client for us is somebody that has an understanding of what they need, but they're really just looking for additional help. They either don't know where to start, they want validation of technologies, but at the end of the day, we look at ourselves as educators. That's what we want to do, and if we have the ability to educate, we feel we have the ability to make a long-term relationship or partnership. So, an ideal client for us is just somebody that is willing to challenge us, but is also allowing us to challenge them.
So, talking a bit more about the customers that you have, how important is scalability and flexibility in warehouse automation solutions? And how do you address those needs for your customers? The ability
Yeah,
to just scale up and down as needed or be
yeah. I
flexible,
mean,
say,
it's
when peak season comes in.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty critical, right? I mean, any technology that's implemented, there's some industries where they can have a little bit more predicted growth or flatline volume throughout the year. But for where we're involved, which is really the retail and apparel and healthcare and wholesale, you have to build in flexibility. The question is how much, right? Because not every solution can be 100% flexible, but there's definitely technologies that are more flexible than others. I will say that peak flexibility or scalability is very difficult to solve. I'll give a free shout out to Locust because they have solved it, and it's a great thing that Locust offers. But most technologies have a very difficult time of flexing up during the e-com peaks because you just can't afford to build that technology to sit there idle for 9 or 10 months out of the year. So, but beyond just the peak, you also have the future growth. I mean, if you look at a 3PL, are they going to bring another client in? Or if you're looking at an end user, are they looking to acquire another similar type um, client that they want to put into their facility? So all those questions are things that you have to ask up front. You have to leave room to grow. You have to leave room to scale. At the same point in time, you got to solve the short-term need of how do I get through peak? So it's a really important question. It's a very hard question, and an even harder solve. So I do think Locust has a great solution for that. There's other persons to goods that
Mhm.
have solved it as well. but it's consistently a challenge, and it's a question that has to be answered.
Drew, how about you?
I think for me is the exciting part is that every customer is starting to recognize they have to have some type of flexibility, and technology's caught up. If you go back a couple decades ago, it was fixed assets. And then you may utilize 50% of that fixed asset, and then you got a bunch of stuff sitting around. The term, you build the church for Easter Sunday.
Mhm.
And what we're seeing today is technology where you don't necessarily have to do that to hit your goals. You hit the point A, B, C, and oh, by the way, if we go to D, we can scale and do something slightly different. I think that's the most exciting part we're at today, because I think I agree with Jordan. 100% of it now is flexibility and scalability. So you don't have sunken capital or wasted capital, right? These smart engineers that are customers, they know there's opportunity cost, and if something's sitting idle, that's an opportunity lost, right? So how do we take advantage of it?
Can you provide an example or two of a solution that you implemented or helped implement that significantly improved clients' warehouse operations? And it doesn't have to be Locust. We can talk about other solutions as well if there's something that comes to mind.
I'll let Gordon go ahead with this one because I've got a bunch. But
Yeah, I mean, so we can talk through a couple different ones. We're in the midst of some right now that are using new technology. I won't use a name just for a variety of reasons, but they're using new technologies that we're really excited about. But the one that I'm going to give you an example of is one that we're implementing right now in the Northeast. And they wanted a way to bring in cases and sort those out to multiple different destinations. The challenges we had is we don't really know how much we're going to grow. We don't really know how many destinations we need. We know we need a lot. And the other thing is we know we don't have much square footage. So how can we solve that problem or problems? So we looked at more the traditional fixed automation that Drew mentioned earlier, of your traditional sortation, like a cross belt sorter, tilt tray sorter, linear cross belt, all sorts of different things. And where we ended up landing was on a robotic sortation approach that we're really excited about. We're seeing this in more and more distribution centers being used, because one of the biggest challenges of outbound sortation is how many diverts do you need? How many carriers do you plan? What rate do you need to accommodate? If you want to use it as unit sortation, what's the right number of chutes? What's the right number of inducts? Those are all challenges that you have to solve now and into the future. But leveraging this robotic sortation, it becomes very simple to add additional diverts, add additional inducts. So with this particular client, we were able to improve their operation by sorting things automatically versus manually, but also still giving that flexibility and scalability we just talked about previously.
It's one where it's a new venture for the customer. They have a temporary house, right? The space they're in is temporary. So how can we give them something that they can pick up and take with them too, right? 10 years ago, we couldn't talk about that. 10 years ago, we'd put something in, have to break it down. You'd have manual operations for a while. You'd impact it. And there'll still be some of that, but the timeline between stop and start is so much quicker now. And so again, I don't have an asset that's buried that I'm not being used, and the responsiveness, and then the easier replication between sites with some of the newer technologies is fantastic. Right. So now we can take that same solution. It might be a little bit of a different flavor, but it's the same branded chips we put in a different facility. And so that's pretty exciting as well. It's easier duplication. A lot of customers think, hey, I've got two operations, we'll do the same thing. Well, everything's mostly unique, right? No matter what you're doing, whether it's workforce, layout, grid in the warehouse, there's all types of different differences. It's allowing us to really help the customer in multiple phases, improving it here and then taking it to different sites. And that it's just an exciting story for them, and pretty pumped to see them working.
Let's move on to a different topic. We've all heard about artificial intelligence, AI. You can't go around anywhere without hearing about it. How do you see artificial intelligence and machine learning influencing the future of warehousing?
I think for me, it's a buzzword, right? And people are using AI as a marketing term as opposed to true AI. Whereas when we were working with things like humanoids, we have a humanoid partner as well. It can truly learn how to work and function with a locust robot in the future. Like, it can truly learn how to be better, how to be more nimble, because it has that built into it. I think the software side of things is going to see more scale quicker, for sure. Like traditional WMs, if you think about your picking technology, your picking software, the advent of AI on how to improve pick paths, how to cycle times within the software, where I'm sending my robots and things of that nature. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a big boon in efficiency from that with the same tech, which makes the same tech more efficient, which is beneficial to everybody. Right? We're not introducing something new. I think those to me, that's a tremendous application we're going to see outside of everybody says it's AI when it's really just an algorithm that repeats itself faster, right? It's truly learning. It's truly taking the environment into play and learning something new.
Jordan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Drew's point, we have AI and machine learning that's taking place today, right? It's been taking place for quite a while. But I think where people are getting really excited is around the generative AI, which is what you see with ChatGPT and large language models. And I think what we're going to see in the warehouse, kind of an easy visualization of where it can make an impact, is right now there's very sophisticated warehouse management systems, warehouse execution systems that Drew is spot on. They use algorithms that are kind of custom made or used from previous iterations, and then they kind of put it in, and it solves 80% of the problems in the warehouse. It works, and it works pretty well. Where I think artificial intelligence will help us out is really in two areas. One is it becomes an orchestrator of that entire facility, and it's able to ingest the data and output the right recommendations to the various different technologies. I also look at it, and for different technologies, this is a little bit more out there, but if we're embracing true artificial intelligence, when we have things like locusts and humanoids and other technologies, they're going to start to learn how to better themselves, how to have better pick routes, how to operate faster, how to be more safe without somebody seeing that and then coding that and recognizing that. So I think I agree. I think it's a buzzword. I think we're a little bit off. We're starting to embrace it now, but it'll be a little bit of time before we see it fully rolled out. But it's going to be, in my opinion, a pretty big game changer in the turnaround time for some of the systems and softwares that we see today.
Going along that same line, how do you envision the warehouse of the future? What technologies do you think will be standard that maybe aren't now? And how will operations differ from today?
Yeah, and Drew, I'm curious in your opinion on this. One area that I feel like if we think around technology and the main use case for it in the distribution center today, it's really around tote movement. And what I mean by that is goods to person technologies use totes. Locus, for the most part, uses totes. It's really about how do we get product from point A to point B and eliminate the walk time. Areas that we haven't really solved yet are the actual pick, right? You don't see a lot of manipulation with units within the facility. And so I think we'll start to see more and more people trying to automate the pick. It's just a very difficult thing to do. But I think what will become more standard, and I'm surprised it hasn't, is really your pack out. There are so many people that are on the outbound dock at pack stations, and all they're doing is picking up a tote, putting units in a box, closing the box, putting it on a conveyor. But it's hundreds of people in a warehouse. It's a big part of it. And there's multiple different technologies out there that allow you to automate that pack out process. So I don't think everyone's thinking that same way, but I certainly see in the near term future pack out becoming a standardized automated approach versus today it's kind of a one off that you don't see as often, at least in our industry.
Yeah, I see customers starting to use technology in places they didn't think about it before, where it's very labor intensive in warehouse, right? I mean, to Jordan's point, we got all these technologies that solve presentation of a pick, but we don't have a lot of technology out there that's solving the unload, the stack, the put away, the movement within the warehouse, the non-value added stuff. Humans are great at being flexible, right?
Mhm.
That's the best part of us. We can think outside the box. We're nimble. We're fast. We can make decisions quickly. But there's these jobs that are very repetitive every single day, and everybody in the industry has been so focused on solving for, well, maybe the sexy topic like pick rate, right, or presentation rate for picking to speed that up. They've kind of pivoted away from all the other stuff that's actually tough to staff, right? It's easy to make people quit when they work in a trailer unloading boxes all day long. And man, this is no fun, right? They drop it, the job becomes less fun. So I think the warehouse of the future has a mixture of automation that supplements the human, doesn't replace the human, that allows us to do what we do best. And you actually see a more advanced person doing jobs in a warehouse, controlling more functions of the day and not just doing one thing all day, right? It's more synchronous. I can know where to go from point A to point B. People are excited to come to work because I get to work with this cool robot and see it do one thing, and then I can shift to something else and do something else and be able to take advantage of what we do best, is be creative and think outside the box.
One last question. What advice would you give to warehouse managers who are just starting out with their warehouse automation journey?
Is be prepared to ask 1,000 questions and get 1,000 answers and be okay where you're at. And that it's okay to go from good to great and great to exceptional. You don't have to go from 0 to 100. It's okay to pace yourself along the way, especially if you don't have the internal resources to help manage it, right? I mean, one of the things we run into quite often is customers who think they want the moon, but they have the staff to get to maybe from Atlanta to Cincinnati. So we got to figure out how to bridge that gap and educate customers. I think that's a big thing for me. As we'll see going along, is that adaptation. Do we really have the team to adapt? Do we understand what we're really getting into? Do we understand the maintenance side of things? Because that's all reality, right? And if I'm a customer who's never had that before, now I've got this automated system, I have to maintain it somehow. So I have to think outside the box with who's on my staff and who's going to work that, who's going to manage it, who's going to look at the API connections between the softwares to make sure we're always talking properly, because I didn't have to do that before. I think we'll see a lot more of that evolution in the future.
Thank you. Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything that Drew said, and I would just say, put your ego to the side, and get an educated, proven partner to help you through that journey. Because as much as you may have somebody say, "Well, I did this and it was similar," I can guarantee you it wasn't. So those questions do need to be asked, and they need to be answered. And your best opportunity is just to pair yourself with somebody that you can have trust in, that you can listen to, and that has some credibility around the technology.
Perfect. Thank you again to Drew and Jordan for joining me today. It was a great discussion. Thank you again to our listeners. We invite you to join a live webinar that we are having on August 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, titled Going Vertical, Mezzanines and Pig Towers. It features DHL and Kate Peterson, our Vice President of Product Marketing. You can register for it at locusrobotics.com/events. Thank you again for listening. We are here to help you move what matters in your warehouse.